Let's start with where we're starting today. I'm not sure.
We're starting with the Dalet Zion Megillah.
Knowledge on Here we go. A Kohen whose hands are blemished may not lift his hands. Rabbi Yehuda says, even one whose hands are stained with woad or matter may not lift his hands because people stare at him. If one says, I will not go before the ark in colored clothing, he may not go even in white clothing. If he says, I will not go before the ark in sandals, he may not even go before barefoot. One who makes us to fill around endangers himself and does not fulfill the precept. If he places the tefillin on his forehead or on his palm, it is the manner of heresy. If he covered them with gold or if he placed them on his sleeve, this is considered the way of outsiders. Okay. Um, if one says, good men shall bless, this is heresy. If one says, your mercy extends even to a bird's nest, or for goodness is your name remembered, or we give thanks to your silence. If one gives symbolic interpretations of prohibitions against forbidden unions, we silence him. If one says the verse, and all your children should not give over to Moloch, means that you have not given over your seed, you impregnate with Gentile women, we should silence him with a condemnation. Okay.
Okay. Maaseh Ruvain Nikra v'lo mitargem says the Tana that when it talks about Ruvain lying with Bilhah, which we interpret to mean that he the parish really is not is he's condemned as if he had actually had relations with Bilhah, but what he did was he violated his father's sleeping arrangements. Okay. Below game. So we read it in the Torah because it's in the Torah, you can't avoid it. But the Meturgaman doesn't translate it because of the covenant of Ruvain that he shouldn't have to we shouldn't like make it more accessible to people hearing this condemnation of him.
Mm.
Other or else because of the covenant of Yaakov. Okay. Maaseh Tamar. The Maaseh of Tamar. Now, this is not the Tamar of with you, Tamar and Yehuda.
Right.
This is Tamar and Amnon, the daughter of she was the daughter of King David, and Amnon was her brother. Um, and there was that whole Maaseh oh, where? Ha! That's interesting.
What's
That's
that?
very interesting. I'm just noticing now because I prepared this from the Art Scroll commentary, and that said that it was talking about Amnon and Tamar, but Kahati says that it's talking about Yehuda. So interesting, interesting.
Wait,
But
yeah, later on it says the first thing, this is whether this may be chosen in Torah. Then the next comment
yeah,
is you who
Maaseh
confesses sin.
Nikra Mitar game.
Well,
So it's read and it is translated because going with the thing of it being referring to the story about Yehuda and Tamar, that kind of makes sense because it ultimately it comes out to show Yehuda's strong character that even though he made some terrible mistakes, but he was man enough to own up to them and to admit that he was wrong, and that's like an inflection point in the whole Yosef narrative,
right,
is the growth of Yehuda and how he becomes the hero of the piece. Especially this week's parsha, this is where he really rises to the greatest level. Maase Egel Harishon Nikra Umitargem. The well, what happens with the Egel Azahav? The first part of it is read and translated, because uh, um, because there's a kapara for Israel on this chet, so that and also there's a reason that people should hear it and become embarrassed and do teshuvah. Um, Hasheni nikra v'lo mitagem. So what is the sheni? The second part, that is where the hemshech of the story with the Egel, where it comes into to Aaron and starts implicating him, and Moshe comes down and say, "What the heck were you doing?" Um, and it's not translated because of the kavod of Aaron. Birkas Kohanim Maaseh Birkas Kohanim is lo, wait. Birkas Kohanim, Amnon, and Maaseh David v'Amnon. Um, so in the Gemara it explains that the pasuk in Maaseh Amnon and Tamar is called as Amnon and David. As in lo nikrain v'lo mitargemin. Um, okay. Oh, but the Mishnah in the Gemara, the Gersa is nikrain v'lo mitargemin. So that's a mistake in the Mishnah. They are read, but they're not translated. Um, the Birkas Kohanim is read and but not translated because and Maaseh David and Amnon is not read and not as a haftarah and is not translated. So that's the explanation of why we've got the sort of dual lashon, I guess. Um, and so Birkas Kohanim, it's impossible to explain the parsha Ein Nikres. You can't say that it's not read because obviously it's read. It's in the Torah. Um, okay, but the Haftarah we can choose what to read and what not to read, and we'll never read the story of Amnon and Tamar. Um,
This is how the Torah um, really is very careful about putting any dispersion upon the Jews, in a certain light. Like here, we read this, but we don't read this because of this and that. And it's interesting that they look, I guess Hashem looked at it that way and said, this is not good. Right.
so back to why don't we translate the Birkas Kohanim? Because it looks like it's Hashem showing favor because Yisa Hashem panav elecha. Is that if it's translated and misunderstood, it shows that it's ki'ilu Hashem perverts justice towards the Jewish people, which chas v'shalom people shouldn't think that that's the thing. So we just leave it as the psukim, as the bracha is in Hebrew, and if people don't understand, then that's at least I've heard it in the original Hebrew. So I guess these Mishnayos that talk about what you translate and what you don't translate is talking about a cultural situation where people didn't necessarily understand Hebrew, but they did understand Aramaic, and
Right.
and we were trying to help them to understand things. And if we can gloss over a few things that are prone to being misunderstood, no, we don't want to. You don't want to give too much information to Amei Haaretz who don't know what to do with it.
I remember Aramaic was a language at the time, though.
Hmm.
So,
Okay. Ein maftirin b'merkava v'Rabbi Yehuda matir. So we go straight against that. Like the Ma'aseh Merkava, Yechezkel's huge prophecy, and that is the haftarah for Shavuos. So apparently the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Ein Maftirin Behoda is Yerushalayim, and Rabbi Eliezer says that the what's the pasuk over here? Hoda Yerushalayim is also from Yechezkel, and the reason that we don't read from this is because of the kavod of Yerushalayim and the kavod of Israel. It's apparently a very harsh piece of Navi. But again, the halacha. Well, I mean, the halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer, but I don't think there is any. Uh, Actually, I'm not sure. Is this one of the? No, it's not one of the haftarahs from the Shiva from the uh, Shlosh de Puranusa, the three haftarahs before Tisha B'av, but I don't think this is one of them. Anyways, Hadran Alach Maseches Megillah. Okay, let's go to Moed Katan. So Moed Katan is, of course, our general term for Chol Hamoed. Um,
right.
and we're opening with what are the things that you can and cannot do on Chol Hamoed, because there is a certain level of Isur Malacha, of which obviously is not as strong as
Right.
the rest of the as the Yom Tov days, but nonetheless there are Isurim of doing Malacha on Chol Hamoed. And we start out with agricultural things and a comparison between what can be done on Chol Hamoed and what can be done in Shemitah. And in most cases, we'll see that Chol Hamoed is more machmir than Shemitah in terms of agricultural stuff,
Right.
um, uh, which is kind of understandable because Shemitah is a whole year, Chol Hamoed is a week.
Right. Right.
Okay, so we're going to be a little more. We can be a little tougher on what you can and can't do with plants. The mashkin beis hashlachin b'moed u'b'shvius. So both Chol Hamoed and Shvius you can irrigate a field that needs to be irrigated. In other words, one that where the crop is something that's dependent on being irrigated and it won't suffice with just rainwater. ממעיין שיצא בתחילה, בין ממעיין שלא יצא בתחילה, and it doesn't matter whether there was a stream that bubbled over or diverted its course originally or not. אבל אין משכין לא מימי הגשמים ולא מימי הקילון. But what you can't do is take rainwater that's pooled and start bucketing the water and bringing it over to your field because this involves too much work. And we don't want people to start exerting themselves on Chol Hamoed. So what you can do is say, okay, there's a stream that's coming past, just and you've got a little gate that you put in place to divert the stream into your field. That's fine. That's very little effort to divert a stream. But taking water and bucketing it from where rainwater is pooled is not allowed. Ve'enosin ugios lagafanim. And you also are not allowed to dig little ditches around the base of the grapevines in order for the rainwater to pool. Because again, that's too much work. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Ein osin es ha'ama betchila b'moed uvashvius. You're making a channel, right? Cutting a canal for the thing. So neither on Chol Hamoed nor on Shvius are you allowed to create this canal. Chachamim disagree with him and say, osin es ha'ama betchila b'shvius. No, you're allowed to do that in Shvius. It's not considered one of the malachas that you can't do in Shvius, but we don't want you to do this on Chol Hamoed because of too much tircha. Umataknin es mekulkalo. Furthermore, if you have a channel that got damaged during Chol Hamoed, you're allowed to fix it. So umataknin es kilkulei hamayim shibirshus harabim. And now we introduce another thing, which is tzorech harabim, which is one of the heterim that you can where you can do malacha on Chol Hamoed, is when the public needs it. Okay,
Right.
so if you've got water channels in Rosh Hashanah, then you need to fix them. And you're also allowed to dig them. You're even allowed to start digging them out lechatchila for the tzorech harabim. Matachnim es hadrachim, and furthermore you're allowed to fix the roads. Ve'es harachovos. Hadrachim es harachovos. I don't two different types of roads. Ve'es mikvos hamayim, and even mikvahs you're allowed to fix on Chol Hamoed. Ve'osin kol tzorchei harabim, and this is an etc. Anything that's needed for tzorchei harabim. And furthermore, you can also mitzayanin es hakvaros. You may mark out the graves, and that's important for Kohanim, so that Kohanim should know where to walk and where not to walk. But v'yotzin af al hakilayim, and furthermore, if the Beis Din is allowed to go out on Chol Hamoed and check people's fields for kilayim, which is one of the things that we saw in I think in Shkalim. We saw that where the Beis Din was going out at a certain point in time and penalizing people who are growing kilayim in their fields even. Okay.
In line of what you said before between Chol Hamoed and Zvius, I just realized it popped in my head. I said, "Oh, that's why this is called Moed Katan, the smaller."
Yes.
Oh,
Exactly.
This struck me like that. So, what genius? Okay, right.
Yeah, well done. Okay, Megilla
Okay,
Aleph Test.
test. Okay, there is no difference between the Kohen Gadol anointed with the oil of anointment and the one who formed Udan additional vestments, except the bull offered for violation of any of these precepts. There is no difference between the Kohen Gadol who is serving as a Kohen Gadol, who is no longer serving except the bull offer on Yom Kippur and the tenth of the ephah. There is no difference between the laws pertaining to a major bama and those pertaining to a lesser bama, except as regards the Pesach sacrifices. This is the general rule. Any sacrifice which is a vow offering or gift offering may be brought on a bama, but any sacrifice that is not a vow offering or gift offering may not be brought on a bama. There is no difference between the laws pertaining to the tabernacle at Shiloh, those pertaining to the temple in Yerushalayim, except that in Shiloh one was permitted to eat kadoshim kalim and second tithes anywhere within the side of Shiloh, but in Yerushalayim one was only permitted to do so within the walls. Both here and there, Kadosh and Kadoshim were permitted to be eaten only within the curtains. After the sanctity of Shiloh, Bamas were permitted, but after the sanctification of Jerusalem, Bamas were not permitted.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And let's
Okay.
check.
Beitza.
Here. Okay. Another authority is talk. Okay. All right. And Beitza. Here we go. Dalad butt base. We may not detach wood from a hut except for what adjoins it. We may carry wood in we may carry in wood from a field which would be gathered, but from an enclosure even what is scattered, which is considered an enclosure, whichever is near to the town. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says, whichever they must enter with a key, even when it was just within the Sabbath boundary. We may not split wood either for beams or for a beam which is broken on Yom Tov, nor may we split with an axe, saw, sickle, or a copets. If a room that is full of produce was sealed but is broken into, one may take from the place where the room is broken into, and where it says one may even break in initially and take. We may not have a lamp because one thereby makes a vessel, nor may we make charcoal on Yom Tov, nor may we cut a wick in two. But Yehuda says one may cut it with a flame for two lamps.
Okay. Sachin Beis Ches.
Okay. Basically. Flour may not be put into charosis, nor into the mustard. However, if one did put it in, it must be eaten immediately, but Reb Meir forbids this. We may not cook the Pesach offering in neither in liquids nor in fruit juices, but we may base and dip it in them. If water is used by a baker, must be poured out because they become kameh. They must be removed on Pesach. Babylonian kutak, medium beer, udumin, vinegar, Egyptian zisum, dyed broth, cooked dough, and scribes' paste. Reverend Elias says also women's cosmetics. This is the general rule. Whatever is of the species of grain must be removed on Pesach. They're in the category of prohibition, but they are not subject to karat. When dough remains in the grooves of an eating trough, if there is as much as cumin and olives volume in one place, we must remove it. If not, it is null because of its insignificance. And likewise, regarding the laws of contamination, if he objects to it, it interposes. But if he desires to remain, then it ends at the trough. Regarding deaf dough, if there is dough similar to that which is already leavened, it is forbidden. Okay, one more. How do we separate color?
Hold on. Just
No, that's it. That's it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Over here. Okay. And we are on to Him. Blind. Lion. If one wishes to lay out his field in bread beds, each serving a different species, Beit Shammai says 3 opening furrows. But Beth Hillel say the width of a Sharon yoke, and the words of these are close to the words of those. At the point of a wheat field, which entered one of I'm sorry, at the point of a wheat field entered one of barley is permitted because it is evidently the end of the field. If his is wheat and his neighbor's is another species, permitted to plant close to it and the same species. If his is wheat and his neighbor's is wheat, he's permitted to plant close to it and a bed of flax, but not another bed of another species. Reb Shimon says especially linseed or any other species. Reb Yossi says even the center of his field is permitted to test with a furrow of flax. One may not plant close to a grain field, mustard, or safflower, but one may plant close to a vegetable field, mustard, or safflower. And one may plant close to a fallow field, which is a plowed field, or a stone fence, to a road or to a fence which is 10 tefachim high, to a ditch which is 10 deep and 4 wide, to a tree which overshadows the ground, and to a rock 10 high and 4 wide.
Okay.
Okay.
Kalem.
Okay. That's a climb. Okay.
Time
Kalem.
to Kalem, yeah.
Yeah. Yud Gimel Kes. A comb for flax whose teeth were removed, but two remain in his tummy. But if one remained in it, it is tahor, and all the teeth by themselves are tummy. And a comb for wool whose teeth were removed from one for every two is tahor. If there remain 3 teeth in 1/10, it is tummy. The outermost tooth was one of them, it is tahor. 2 teeth were removed from the comb, and one made them into tweezers, they are tummy. If 1 tooth was removed and one prepared for use with a lamp or for stretching, it is tummy. What is the measure for damaging metal utensils? A bucket sufficient to draw water with it, a kettle sufficient to heat water with it, a boiler sufficient to hold cellar, a soup pot sufficient to hold ladles sufficient to hold burritos. Wine measures are calculated with wine, and oil measures are calculated with oil. Rebbe Elias says all of them are calculated with burritos. The Rebbe Kiva says a utensil that lacks a cover is tummy, but a utensil lacking hammering is tahor. A staff whose head one attached to a nail shaped like an apple is tummy. If one studied it, it is stomach. Reb Shimon says only when one makes 3 rows of nails in it, but all of the components, when they're made of an ornamentation, are tahor. If one attached to a tube to the head of the staff, and the same applies to a door, it's tahor. If the tube was a utensil and attached it to the staff of the door, it is tameh. When does it achieve its tahara? Peshawai says when one destroys it, and Beisila says when one attaches it. Okay. And, yeah. And we're now on to Sahaji. Okay. Gimel Hay. A friend and an enemy. A friend is one whose groomsman, and I'm sorry, this is wrong.
Mm-hmm. You're right, friend and enemy.
A friend and an enemy. A friend is one's groomsman. An enemy is one who did not speak to him for 3 days out of enmity. They said to him, Jewish people are not suspected of this. How do they examine the witnesses? They bring them in and admonish them. Then they send everyone out and retain the most prominent of them. And they say to him, state how you know this one that owes that one. He said, he told me I owe him. And he so-and-so told me that he owes him. He has said nothing until he says he admitted to him before that he owes him 200 zuz. Afterwards, they bring in the second one, examine him. If the words are found to coincide, they take up the matter. If two vote not liable, if one votes liable, he is not liable. If two vote liable, and one votes not liable, he is liable. If one votes not liable, and one votes liable, or even if the two exonerate or two obligate and says, I do not know, they add more judges. When they conclude the matter, they bring them in. The head judge says, so and so, you are not liable, and so, you are liable. And where do we know this? That one of the judges leaves the court. You should say, I
You should
exonerated.
not say.
I should not say, I exonerated my colleagues as obligated, but what should I do since my colleagues outnumbered me? Concerning this, it is stated, you shall not go out among your people bearing tales, and it is stated, one who bears tales reveals secrets. Okay, quick
Okay.
question for you. Quick question.
Yeah.
Not this week, next week.